hesitation, I have the pleasure of introducing Wade Larson for the session titled How to Start a Revolution.
All right, thanks. All right, we'll get that one out of the way. So, yeah, I mean, great title, but I got to check and see if we have the right audience here first. So let's find this out. All right, so let's see who's in the audience first. Just check and see here. All right, who would consider themselves maybe a little rebel? All right, at least an explorer, maybe an inventor. How about the rule breakers? Yeah, here's the thing about those of us in HR, right? We know exactly where the line is. Exactly. All right, now there are those of them who'd say stay away from the line. I get that. They usually have at least one on my team. And they tell me. But then there are the rest of y'all who go right up to the line and sometimes like jump across and back. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. Some of you are comfortable staying on here until I can just get back over. Now, for those of you who are cautious and don't quite like that kind of change or that kind of edginess, you're still welcome to stay, but I'll tell you, don't do the evaluation. You may not like it, right? And I'm comfortable with that because part of being revolutionary and trying to change new ideas is that not everybody's going to like it. And I get that. And you have to be comfortable with that too because, hey, one rule of HR is you can't please everyone, can you? We didn't get into HR to be loved. We don't tell you that in school. Wow. But, we start off with this title because, things have to change. Things have to be different. And, to what level? How can we express that? And so coming up with this title, I think, well, revolutionary. It took me back, pondering this thing, it took me back to a trip that I took the kids on, the whole family, right? My wife came too. Didn't go by myself. Take this massive road trip towards the time that my oldest son was graduating. For those who came yesterday, you saw there's a couple of the kids here in a different context. But we took a road trip across country, right? 9,800 miles of fun. Of course, we took a friend for some drama. But we ended up right here at Gadsby's Tavern. For those of you who are familiar with it, there in Alexandria. Great place. The food's fine, but it's the ambiance. What's so cool about Gadsby's Tavern? It's because this is the hangout of George. It's George Washington's favorite hangout, right? He hangs out. He hung out here all the time. This is where he celebrated his final birthday. He hung out with the likes of Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, those kind of folks. And I can't help but figured that he had to have had a conversation or two, or many, about the revolution. Imagine the conversations that they had. Now, understand that these are people of substance, people of wealth, people of status, and they could have sat back and said, all right, you know what, these things, not ideal, but you know what, they didn't have to change. They could have gone with the status quo. They could have just dealt with it and been like, all right, this is uncomfortable, don't like it, but things ain't they're not that bad. But they did it anyway. And so considering the question of why change, it wasn't necessarily for them. Sure, it was uncomfortable. They could have done better, but understand this, that they didn't do it for them. So why do something as broad as a revolution? They did some change. They wrote letters. They tried to make some shifts happen. And it didn't happen. And they recognized they needed something more than just a little bit of change or transformation. They needed something bigger. Think about us. Think about us. Do you remember why you went to HR? For some of us, it's been a little while. We have to remember some days, right? You think, why am I doing this? Yeah, I know, some of us have those days. But for most of us, we wanted to do something. So maybe it's because we wanted to help other people. Maybe we wanted to do something strategic because HR is in a great spot to do something different, right? We can make a huge difference. We can do some cool stuff. We really can. We get to do some stuff for people that they can't do for themselves. It's a unique situation. We're in a unique position, and we have a unique place in the organization that no one else has. I mean, think about it. We have access to everything and everyone, and no one has it. The question becomes, what do we do with it? It's pretty cool if we do it right. But these days, how's it going? Now, if things are great, awesome, fantastic, keep it going. But we've kind of taken a whooping, haven't we? It's been challenging. We understand, we talk about mental health, but who's taking care of our mental health? I mean, we had a rough few years. We had that pandemic, and let's be honest, you all got your company through it, did you not? Yes, hats off to you. Good job, right? It was HR that sucked it through it. And I'm just going to say that right now. It wasn't the CEO, it was HR. They turned to HR because that was a people problem. It was HR who was talking them through it, passing out tissues, handing out the masks, taking care of business. It was HR that got you through it. Good job. You didn't get the credit that you deserved. Good on you. But then came the post-pandemic. Now, how many of you were in the same meeting I was in when you went back to the executives after you downsized and you right-sized and you said, all right, now, I see the projections coming up in 6 months. You know all those people you laid off, those skilled people? Hire them back now. You remember that conversation? Was the laughter audible in your conversation? Uh-huh. Because what happened? They said, why would we want to do that? Because you said, in 6 months from now, you won't find them. You remember that conversation? Machinists, technicians in my world, you take your pick of whatever the skilled technician was, and you shared with them, this is why you're not going to find the talent in 6 months from now. And they didn't believe you. Then what happened? 6 months later, they're the same people in your office saying, why can't I find fill in the blank? Ouch. We're exhausted because nothing's changed. It's the same thing. So what happens is that we also consider our people. Our people are exhausted too. Things are happening, things are challenging, but the workforce is different. Would you not agree? This is a different workforce, not from 10 years ago, not from 20 years ago, not even from 5 years ago. This is a different workforce from 2 years ago, correct? It's different. So I asked this question of my executive MBA students at Washington State University. I get the opportunity to teach them among their first class in leadership and then their final class. And I asked them in the final class this, said, it's been a couple of years, folks. Have you changed what you're doing? Because after all the classes that you take, after everything that you've done, after all this investment of time, energy, and money, are you still doing the same stuff that you were doing 2 years ago? And if the answer is yes, I got to ask why. Some of them will say, but I was waiting until I graduate and then I'll start. Huh? If you're still the same person you were when you started, then you just wasted a whole lot of time. Well, we in HR, we got to start figuring this thing out, because if we are still doing what we were doing before, I got to ask the question why. It's a different workforce and we need to adapt. If we're still using old solutions to try and solve new problems, it's not going to work. And that's where we're at today. Yesterday in my session, right, the session was they can't fix what they don't know. Well, it's the same deal, right? I asked this question, well, what if? Start talking about, well, what if other people had the solution they didn't tell us? Well, I'd ask the question, what happens if we could have found out the answer if we would ask better questions? Well, in this session, I'm asking the question, what if we can help to solve the problems if we change it? What if we could change it? And I'm saying you can. And this is where we're going. But it starts with change. All right, this word, how does it make you feel? Nah, it's overused, it's fine. I'm comfortable with change. It's just another Tuesday, right? That's my world. Now, that's fine for those of you because that's what brought you here. It's like change, all right, it's revolution. When we can get to that? I know, it's like, spike me, right? Spike, let's do this. Now, for most people, change is going to be either good or it's bad. They're going to have a feeling about this. They like it, they don't like it. For those of you who are in this situation, like change every 5 minutes, every 2 minutes, every 1 minute. It's different. We use axioms like, hey, change is the only constant. Change or be changed, which I agree with, right? There's no status quo, but that's not what they're talking about. Now, when we talk about change, though, we're in a different environment that resists change. Now, it came to, there's a situation, there's a conference that I had last fall. It was right here, in fact, at McCormick Center at FabTech. Now, and this became very relevant to the situation that we're at with workforce. So FabTech it's like Disneyland for fabrication and welding, right? Imagine the entire conference center filled with industrial-sized toys of welding and machining. Cool stuff, right? This is some uber cool stuff. But I attended a session, and it's the call out of shame for those of us in manufacturing. It's fabulous. It was great. So he asked some questions. He says, how many of you still are using machines that are 10 years old? Well, of course we are, right? These are big machines. They're expensive machines. How many are using machines that are 20 years old? All of us still. 30 years old? Fewer, but most of us. 50 years old? We're still raising our hands. How many of you have machines that are as old as World War II? Like still, the hand of shame goes up, right? He says, you do know we depreciate those in 7 years, right? He says, why do we do that? We keep running it because we can. We keep doing it because it still works, or so we think. But think about this. What's the cost of keeping this stuff running? The machines break down. So we get new parts, but at some point somebody stops making the parts. So we have them special ordered. It costs a lot of money to have them special ordered, but at some point they stop making it. They won't make it anymore. So what do? We make it ourselves. At some point, nobody will come fix this anymore. So what do? We hire somebody specifically to just fix this machine. You know what I'm talking about. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And so now I've got this machine. It's old, it's clunky. I make my own parts and I hire my own person just to run the darn, just to keep the machine going. But then we start talking about the size of the machine, that the efficiency of the machine, even the quality of the products coming off. Why do we keep it running? Because we can, because it works. We don't do the ROI. Even if we do the ROI, we find out that if I spend $2 million to get the new machine, the latest machine, it's a quarter of the size. It will work 4 times faster or more. The efficiency is far greater. The quality of the product is many times better. It will do the work of 4 FTEs. Not that I'm going to let anybody go, but I don't have to replace 4 FTEs, right? The numbers just go exponential. It's to the point that the ROI on this thing is the minute it hits the ground. I can prove it on paper. Yet still, I can't get the machine on the floor. Why don't we change? The same thing happens when we start talking strategy with our workforce. We can prove these things, we can demonstrate these things, but why don't we change the way that we recruit? Why don't we change the way that we work with talent? Why don't we change the way that we work with our people? We start talking about these change resistors. Some of those common reasons that we don't want to change, those common resistance elements, right? Fear. These aren't all of them, of course, but that fear, the fear of the unknown. Oh my gosh, what happens if? I don't know what's going to happen there. Denial. It's not that bad. I don't have a problem. It's not me. It's somebody else. You know what I'm talking about. We don't have a problem. Perceived pain, the pain of change, the pain of it's going to cost too much, or how much time is it going to take, or what happens if? The loss of control. What happens if, right? Am I going to lose my job over this? Am I not going to be the content expert anymore? Are you not going to rely on me anymore? Or I don't know how to get from here to there, so we're just not going to do it, and I need to know everything. That's a big deal. The bottom line is that for most people, change sucks. I mean, that's just it. Now, for those of us who say, hey, change is just it, that's great. But for most people, this is it. We like homeostasis. We like to be where it's at, but change is disruptive. But understand this, the driver of change is pain. It's pain. Pain is what causes it. And until the pain gets big enough to change, it's not going to happen. But it has to be to the individual. We can try and promote it all we want, but change happens when the pain of the status quo exceeds the pain that's coming from the change. So until the current is more painful than what the change is, it's going to stay the same. Does that make sense? That's what's happening. Now with that said, you say, well, what's the point here? How are we getting from that change status? Because we've tried change management, we've tried transformation, but we still largely do the same things over and over. We won't change until we decide to. We can't change, and we can't force other people to change. Does anyone have teenagers? Anyone have a 2-year-old? Same concept. Until they want to do it, they're not going to do it. And that's the whole point. We can run these ROIs all day long, but until they decide that it's necessary, it's not going to happen. Until we hit their why, it's not going to matter. Because these become the top influencers for change, and when it becomes necessary to change, when they decide they're going to change. The what, the why, and the how. When we define the what, that's a big key. A lot of times we say, well, we got to change. Well, we'll change what? We have to put it into context and to content. Sometimes we have a problem with defining just what that change is. That's a struggle. But the why, the purpose, having a common purpose, we can say that we know why. But until it connects with the other person's why, then we don't have a connection. And sometimes we miss that mark. Until we can help other people connect with it, right, then we can't get to the how. We can come up with all of our HR strategies. We can come up with all of our training sessions. We can come up with everything that we want to lay it out. But until we hit the why of our managers and our executives and everyone else, until we align with that why, it's not going to matter. That's where we hit the mark. So, consider this in the context of our talent challenge. Most of us are finding these as our talent issues. Now, if you're in a unique environment that you don't suffer from these, good job. You're unique, you're a unicorn, your time is coming. For the rest of us, we're suffering to different degrees. But we all are facing fewer candidates. This is a numbers problem, and we've been talking about this for the last 2 years, saying, hey, we just had fewer babies. And when you have a negative birth rate from 1971 on, this is going to catch up to us. More people are going out than are coming in. It's not the pandemic. This has been coming for a long time. A long time. The pandemic may have accelerated some things, but it's a numbers game. This isn't going to be fixed. This is how it is. But then even the numbers coming in are less qualified. We have a talent issue. So not only are there fewer, but they're less qualified. And then the stable issue, right? Hey, it'd be nice if they actually stayed, right? Not ghosting us. Would actually be great if you came to work. Forget about on time, just come to work. They're different. They're different. We'll just call it different. Okay, that's just a nice way. We'll just say it's different. But this is going to be multi-generational. This is not going to fix itself, and we can't depend on someone else to take care of it. We're always going to have the group from somewhere else say someone oughta. It's that someone oughta category that says someone ought to take care of this. Who is that? I hear that somebody ought to take care of this at the schools. They ought to build this into the curriculum. Guess what? They're not going to. Ever. Someone ought to build this into the home life. That's definitely not going to happen. The someone oughtas are not going to take care of this. No one will take care of this. You say, well, they have these 21st century skills that they're teaching in school. Read their definition of what 21st century skills are. They don't match what we need in business. They're not the same definitions that you and I are talking about. Nobody else is going to solve this problem. When we start talking about our top needed skills, understand the skills that we list out are industry agnostic. We're not looking for the technical skills. Sure, some of us want technical skills, but when we start whining, oh, we're whiny. We are so whiny, and we are needy, and we say, we want, but then they say, but tell us what exactly you need. When we break it down to what exactly we are asking for as business from our new employees, here are the top things, industry agnostic, that we are asking for. Communication skills, teamwork, problem solving, adaptability, critical thinking. You know the list. These are industry agnostic. These are not going to be taught at school. There is not a course that's built into it. And guess what? We can't depend on anyone else to teach these. These are not going to be developed through traditional methods. Understand this. So if we're going to have a workforce that comes in and these needs are going to be met, we have to figure out something different. It's not a situation of minor change. It's not even a transformation. We're going to have to revolutionize how to make this happen so our workforce comes in with these skills. That's going to be different. It's going to be way different. And it's going to take a different approach than we have ever, as workforce, as employers, taken before. You're going to say, but it never has been our responsibility before. I know. And that's why we're here talking about it. So let me share with you 5 pathways that we've been working on for the past 5 years to take a step forward. And that's where I'm shifting the attention now, is to share these 5 pathways. Are these perfect? No, I'll tell you they're a work in motion because we're doing stuff that hasn't been done collectively. Now, there are examples of these 5 areas, of course. We're not the only ones doing some of this work. There are others that are light years ahead in some of these areas, and there are others that are trying a lot of other things. These are just 5 examples of areas that we're working on to say, here's how we're taking charge of it and doing this ourselves so we can figure out how to build this into our workforce. Because if we don't do anything, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. That's the cost. Trust me, my wife asks me all the time, why are you doing this, honey? You come home, you're exhausted. I'm not kicking the dog. I promise I'm not kicking the dog. I like Hank, big old sheepdog. I love him. He's great. He's adorable. I'm not kicking the dog yet. He won't let me. He's too big. He's 100 pounds. But understand, she's like, why are you doing this? And I can't not do this because somebody's got to. This is our challenge. Somebody has to. If we don't do this, we're going to keep getting what we're getting. Let's start with these 5 examples of opportunities that we have. And really, this is not meant to say this is what you ought to do. These are inspirations to say, what can you do? And maybe this will spark an idea or two of what you can do to go back and do something different. All right, let's start with number 1. This is maybe a lower hanging fruit for you. And this is to take a look at your current processes and see what you can do differently. All right, we'll start with how to rework work. So I'm going to ask the question, when was the last time that you took a step back and asked, how are we working work? What do you mean? Are you saying, when was the last time I redid my job descriptions? No. When was the last time we conducted a job analysis? No. Closer, but no. I'm saying, when was the last time you took a step back and said, how do we really do work? I'll give you an example. So for the last couple of years, I've been told I need more machinists. More machinists, more machinists, more machinists. And for 2 years, I told them there are no extra machinists. Why not? Let me pull out the whiteboard one more time. Machinists going out, trickle of machinists coming in. That's what to expect. We have to think differently on how we use machinists. If the local community college generated all the machinists that they could possibly generate at 100% capacity, we still won't have even close to the number of machinists that we could possibly need today. Why is that? Boeing, on the other side of the state of Washington, is so far behind that if you order a 737 today, you might get it in 3033. Maybe, if you're lucky. Airbus is the same way. Why? Because they don't have enough workers to meet the current demand. They're that far behind. And they suck about 50% of all of our trained machinists from our side of the state. Their quota is about 5 high school seniors per high school from our area. That's out of high school, that's not the college. We can't compete with that. We have to figure this thing out. If the community college is there and pumping out 20 per year, right? Understand this, our folks are retiring out. We don't have the machinists coming in. Ouch. So I asked this question. Reworking work, right? It's an impossible math question. I asked the question, how many machinists do we really need? He says, well, here's how many machinists we currently employ, how many positions. I said, I know, but that wasn't the question. How many machinists do we actually need? Of all the work that we have a machinist do, how much of that work actually requires a machinist to do it? All of it. Wrong answer. Listed out of all this work, do I need a machinist? How much of this could I take away and give to a machinist tech? Apply this to any other job, folks. This is not just a manufacturing, apply it to anyone else. How much of this can I take away and give to somebody else so that the machinist is there and give it to the lower level? Then take the machinist tech, how much of that can I give to somebody else at a production worker level? How much of that can I give to a high school intern? Interesting question. It's not that I don't have enough machinists. It's that I'm asking the wrong question. If I rework work, I may have a better chance of doing this. Once I start asking better questions, I can improve the process and I can start to automate. I can start eliminating things that I don't need to do anymore, and I can start leveraging the time and the positions. That's what we're talking about. You see, this also allows me to get better crafted jobs, so my highly paid and highly skilled people stop doing boring stuff. They get to start doing cool stuff. I get to upskill the people, and they get to start doing awesome stuff. They get to stop doing dumb stuff. Right? That's going to charge them up. And mostly, and in the end, I get to start doing CPI, continuous process improvement. Again, this is not a manufacturing thing. This is an everything piece. You see, your employees are doing this job 8, 10 hours a day. They know 10 different ways to do their job better. Why? Because they do it all day, every day. If you get out of their way and let them do it, they'll do it. Steve Jobs always said he hires smart people and then he gets out of their way. I agree. If we can just get out of their way, they can be empowered to make that happen. And this is one of the fastest ways to do that. Now, some of you met this guy yesterday. This is Jeff. Not only is Jeff in a different capacity, but he is also our manufacturing engineering manager. And in manufacturing, we weld. We again use this in whatever the industry is. But in welding, we have this split personality. Because in our organization, we'll have people come work for us, but they'll work for us for a long time, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Same goes with the welders, which means that they learn how to weld 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and they may be welding the same way. But when it comes to welding techniques, we have new technologies, and y'all have changing technologies. And unless we shift to the new technologies, we will not be competitive any longer. Let me introduce you to the Cobot. This is a collaborative robot. The things are awesome. They're stellar. When we apply them to welding, they're not going to replace people, they're going to optimize people. They optimize performance. These things can weld, these things can enhance our quality, these things optimize performance. They are phenomenal. They cost less than an FTE. They work all their shifts. They don't call in sick. They're fantastic. When you get done with the quality of these things are amazing. But what's important is I don't have to hire somebody who knows how to actually program these things. You don't have to know how to program them. In 30 minutes, you can program this thing and just keep on passing stuff through over and over again. The thing is awesome. So Jeff asked this question. He says, how can we incorporate these things and get as many in as possible, help to compensate for our lack of welders? Simple question. Engineers grabbed 2 of them, spent 2 weeks evaluating. How can we incorporate cobots into our production? After 2 weeks, they report back, there's no way that we can use these. He's dumbfounded. What do you mean? We looked at them, we evaluated them, we assessed them. There's no possible way that we can incorporate them into our current processes. He's dumbfounded. He takes a look at this and he realizes we over-engineered. We overcomplicated it. He calls the vendor, says, look, do me a solid, let me use it 1 more week. Sends the cobot back. At this point, he just hired an intern from high school. No, he's not a welder. Had a little bit of welding experience in high school, but this guy's not a welder. Gives him the instruction manual at 9 a.m. He says, here, just take a look at this thing, right? Just take a look at this thing and read the instructions and get back to me. In the back of Jeff's mind, he's trying to uncomplicate this because he remembers a story that his dad may have told him about Lee Iacocca and the K car. You remember the old K car with Chrysler? Well, at one point, Lee Iacocca was talking to his executives, and he said, hey, I wonder what it would look like if the K car were a convertible. I don't know if you heard this story. The engineering department comes back to him and says, tell you what, in 6 months, we can have a mock-up. 6 months. He picks up the phone, he calls, he says, drive the K card in front, give me a pair of safety glasses, gloves, and a chop saw. Walks them all down, takes the roof off. He's like, I like it. Let's produce it. Jeff's thinking, let's do this thing. So he gives Owen, the intern, the instruction manual, says, I'll see you about noon. You tell me what you think. So Owen, at noon, comes back and he demonstrates 3 precision welds. These things are beautiful. They're complex welds. They're dumbfounded. Jeff is a CWI, right? He's a certified weld inspector. He's got a couple other welding engineers, and they're going, how'd you do this? You're not a welder. It's like, easy. I'm a gamer. I treat it like a video game. Genius. Genius. He uncomplicated the whole thing. He took a look at the process, reworked the work, and he figured this thing out. Lowest common denominator. As a result, guess what? We do have cobots. We uncomplicated it. We unengineered the engineering. As a result of building these in, of course, we expanded it, we optimized it, and we are able to get a lot more contracts and make a lot more money because we're able to integrate these things. But you see, when you start reworking your work, you start to come up with new options. And what's the revolutionary part of that? Sometimes, yeah, you're going to piss somebody off. But you got to ask why. It's going to make people uncomfortable. It's going to make them uncomfortable. But you got to push the button to take the next step. And that's where you come in as the revolutionary. Change is comfortable and it's uncomfortable, but you're also going to be nice. Transformational change, that's disruptive. And it's going to be uncomfortable, and people may not like it, but they'll get over it. Revolutionary change, it's going to be disruptive, and you're going to have some bumps and bruises. But in the end, you ask the question, is it worth it? Yeah. Let's talk about the next piece here. This is your in-house training. I'll tell you this. This is probably going to be our bread and butter moving forward. Given the talent challenges that we have, this is probably going to be our go-to for our talent development in the future. Talking about the schooling, it's great. They're slowing the uptake. Hey, as a professor for 25 years, I get it. I understand it. I'm still a fan. I'll still support them. But in-house, we're going to have to focus on hiring them with aptitude at a lower level and training them up. That's going to be our bread and butter for developing and finding talent for the future. End of story. Now, if we want to mainstream this, we're going to have to start with competencies. Skills-based hiring, skills-based developing competencies, it's not new, but we need to perfect it. To help our managers understand this and uncomplicate competencies, it gets down to helping them understand what is it that I need a person to know, be, and do. That's the uncomplicated version of it. And I tell them, grab the back of a napkin, list out what do I need you to know, be, and do. Don't talk in terms of competencies, that will complicate it. Just list out 10 things, or the top 10 things I need you to know, be, and do. Create success factors of what will make them the most successful in their job, and define what good looks like. That's how we talk. By doing that, what does it do? If I can spell out what I'm looking for as a manager, then at the point of hire, what does that do? It creates consistent criteria. I can communicate more effectively what I'm looking for from the candidate, but for everybody in the selection process, then they can have the same terms and conditions. I can make better hiring choices, more consistent, more equitable hiring processes, and weed fewer people out. And that's a big problem that we have these days. It's huge. We're letting way too many good candidates go, qualified candidates go, because we're not defining it well enough. But once they come on board, imagine this. Because I've defined these skill sets, and it's as simple as what does good look like, I can know where they're at upon hire, and that on board the first 90 days, where do I need to get you to? What does proficiency mean? And we work together to get there. This creates their IDP, their individual development plan. We're working together, and they know what it takes to get there. But from the 90 days on, what does the ongoing to mastery look like? And they can spell it out. It's spelled out precisely, consistently, and I know what engagement is. One of those top reasons why people leave is, I don't know what's expected of me. I don't know what it takes to advance. I don't know what it takes to move on. This helps to solve that problem. But then from there on, from the development standpoint, they're asking that question, right? What's my future? By spelling these things out, you can say, what does it take to get to my next job? They're spelled out. You can say, let's work on this together to get you from where you're at to where you want to go. So while competencies aren't the new thing, we don't necessarily do it well. But you can bring your managers in and help out with that, but that creates a development culture. That culture is where the managers come in. Yesterday I talked about the managers owning their own culture. This is the make or break piece. The managers have to own the culture and help the employees be successful. And that's where the revolution comes in, because it's not happening. But we get them on board, and that's going to make it happen. All right, number three, education partners. If you're like us, we depend on education partners, high schools and colleges, to educate our folks. So when they come in, they have certain skills and abilities, correct? What we're finding is we need to help them out. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to give a shout out to the teachers, especially the K-12 teachers. They're doing their best. They are. I can't do it. I can't do it, right? I mean, honest to goodness. But also keep in mind this. They go to school so they can go to school so they can come back to school. I mean, they do. And bless their hearts, I can't do that. But they are teaching the kids how to get ready for our workplace, not having been in our workplace. And so if we're not helping them to understand what we need or how we need it, then understand why we're getting what we're getting. We need to create a connection to work with the schools to create that bridge. That's where we're at. So first things first, I have to define the question. Remember the what, why, and how? The best thing I could do is create a question. If I can define the question, if I can define a what, if I can define the need, that's going to help me to catalyze my relationship. So I defined it this way, and it doesn't mean that's my only thing that I'm looking for, but it does help me to catalyze my purpose behind it. I asked this question: how can I get a high school graduate to come out of high school as a fully trained machinist? Now extrapolate this. Could be a pre-engineer, could be, take your pick of industry, could be a welder, it could be anything you want. How can I get somebody out of high school ready to go to work? Now, at first the resistance is that's impossible. You can't do this. But think of the context. Think of the context. 100 years ago, an 18-year-old had a mortgage, spouse, probably a kid. I'm not promoting that. But what happened over 100 years? We expect less. Things change, things shift. All of a sudden it becomes impossible. I've worked with the youth long enough to know that people rise to the level of expectations that you set. And not every kid's going to do it, but what if we build the structure to allow it to happen? I had to ask the question, could it happen? Could it be possible? So in order to make this structure happen, can we build a workforce opportunity? So I get my partners in crime together and we decide to take a field trip. This is a pretty big field trip. We go around the country to ask the question, could it happen? Does it exist? Of course it exists. No matter what you ask for, it already exists. We go to Wisconsin, go to little SHRM, Wisconsin. This is in the middle of nowhere. Now, of course, I don't recommend going to Wisconsin in December ever again. But it was fun. It was a good time. But here in SHRM, K through 12 has 600 kids. This is in the middle of nowhere. But this is the 19th year that they had Cardinal Manufacturing. This is a program where 20 seniors have to apply to get into this program. It's a job shop. It's a student-run job shop. In the 19th year, this is last year, they pulled in $175,000 in revenue. Good night. It's run like a business. They have to apply to get in. They all have jobs, and they run it as a student-run job shop. Like, dang, they figured some stuff out. That's cool stuff. We went to Fort Smith, Arkansas, to Peak Innovation Center. And sure enough, guess what? The community college and the high school work together with business, and they are graduating kids with their associate's degrees in the trades in machining and welding and electrical automation. Cool. So it does exist. So when we come back and we find our partner at the high school to say, do you want to work together? Understand it becomes possible, and I define the question. Now, before I go back and start to fix anything or change anything, I have to ask the question, what am I after? You see, at this point, I have to go out to my industry partners and say, this is bigger than me. And this is where, as a revolution, it gets easier if you make it bigger than you. Because I have to recognize, number one, if I'm going to make this bigger than me, I can't hire everybody that I'm going to make this happen. I can look internally and spend all the money and try and fix it myself, but then what happens? I'm going to build all this stuff, I'm going to spend all this money, but then it's just me, me, me. And that's where most of these programs begin and fail, which you could, and that's fine. But that's part of the challenge. We build it internally, and it lives and dies internally. If you want strength, consider the community as well. Because not only do you need to build your workforce, but who's building the workforce for your suppliers and your vendors? You got to consider the quality of those as well. But what we also recognize is that our workforce, they swap among our competitors too. We're hiring each other's people, are they not? If I'm developing one, I better be developing all of them because they're going to be shifting around and playing musical chairs. All of them. Whoever I develop in high school, they're going to come around at some point. It's bigger than me. Also, by creating strength in numbers, I don't have to pay for the whole thing. It's going to be an expensive proposition. But by creating this alliance within my industry, we can solve this problem together. I can leverage the power of my industry. I can get their minds in on this too. Cool stuff. Using co-opetition, so using this collective effort, we started. So 5 years ago, I asked this question. I said, well, what if? What's our biggest problem? Getting interest from the kids in our industry. So again, take your pick of what the industry is because this model works in other industries too. I said, what if we start something for juniors and seniors? It's a 3-week simulation. What if we put them into manufacturing? I don't want the kids that already know they're in manufacturing. I want the kids that don't know yet if they want to go into manufacturing. I want the ones in the middle, have some interest. I want a 3-week simulation where we bring them in, put them into teams, and expose them to manufacturing. I want to make them start to understand operations. I want them to see all the different careers. I want them to see what it looks like to be in engineering, to be whatever. I want them to design. I want them to manufacture. And I want them to sell these products. I don't care. Let's do it in wood. That's easy enough. Let's have them learn. Let's have them make mistakes. Let's put them through the ringer. And at the same time, let's send them out to different manufacturers to see how it's done. And what if we paid them too? We tried paying them for a bit too, and let's shift to some different rewards. Of course, one of my partners says, sounds expensive. I said, I know, I need a check. And you know what he said? How much? I said, it's going to take 5 zeros. Okay. And then I asked the next one, and she said, okay. And then I called the next one, and he said, can I do 4 zeros? Okay. And so on. And we started the Production and Manufacturing Institute. Cool. So the first year we did it with 20 kids. Interesting. We have no idea. We're building the bike as we ride it. The second year was the pandemic. Keep that close. We almost did anyway. But yeah, that was smarter. We didn't do it. All right. The next year we did it with 20 kids. But the following year, there's a small school that said, hey, have you thought about doing a remote site? Like manufacturing. Great idea. We did it. The following year, last year, we did it with 4 sites. This year, the state of Washington said, can you create a franchise model? Because we want to replicate. Not only that, but we're running a pilot project for a 1-week model for the middle schools. How can you do this? Because the whole point is, can you generate interest? But from that interest, what else are we doing? We came up with a $200,000 grant to revamp one of the shops. And this year we came up with a second $200,000 grant to revamp another shop so we can expand the industry and the interest. But what happens is one thing leads to the other. But we can't create that. We can't build these skill sets unless we start somewhere. And so back to the question, how do we create these candidates faster? This is great, but what are we doing? How do we do this? It extrapolates. We have to innovate by tying these together, and that gets us to number 5, right? We go back to the colleges. Well, I asked the colleges originally, hey, colleges, can we do something different? No, it doesn't fit our Carnegie model. I know it doesn't, but can we anyway? No. Pretty soon we asked for hey, can we do it this way? No. I said, okay, so I went to a college that said yes. Well, of course I stepped on the toes of the local college. Then all of a sudden the local college says, well, okay. Well, then they come and they say, well, we're going to start a night program. And I said, because we're on the advisory board, I said, if you're going to start the night program, can you design it this way? Could we do a night program that ends in a certificate? Why would you want to do that? Because we asked you to. But if you're going to do that, could we do micro-credentials? What does that look like? Smaller, you'd tell us in advance that you're having it so we can send people in to train on those nuggets if we need it. Never heard of micro-credentialing. I know. We can't do it that way. Why not? It doesn't fit financial aid. I know. But if you have 20 seats and you only fill 10, how much does the other 10 pay you? Nothing. Exactly. So what if I paid you for the other 10? You see, we start having those conversations and they're going to build it that way. And we start to shift. We go to the high schools. And at first I was trying to bring everybody along and say, hey, can we adjust the curriculum? No, no, no. But then I start to focus on the one that says yes. Pretty soon we say, hey, can we create a pull strategy where you start to work and you have success with the one high school? And we start to create a funnel into our company. And we start to train those kids and we start to build the bridge and it's successful. And the other high schools say, I want to be part of that. And pretty soon we do have success by isolating the one, creating that one success story. But then instead of focusing so much on I have to have the degree, somebody asked me, why are you fighting so hard on this degree, on this dual credit option? What do you need? You need competencies. You're the one talking about competencies. How about credentials? Industry recognized credentials. What do you need for that? I said, that's a great question. So I go to the high school teacher and said, hey, here's what we need for welding. Can you build this into your framework already? He says, yeah, absolutely. Don't need any special permission? No, we'll just build it in. So what you're telling me is that they get done with the welding program. We get to the end, they can test, they can be certified welders, come to work for us, right? Yeah. Is that easy? Yeah. No kidding. All you have to do is ask. Build a relationship, guide, and enable. But the biggest win that we find is getting the kids to work. Now, this will extrapolate in other methods as well. But what we find is all the things that we've been asking for, communication skills, problem-solving skills, we know better than anyone. How did we learn it? Getting a job. The faster we can get them to work, the easier. And if we're stuck in that mode of saying we don't hire anybody under the age of 18, we got to fix that because you can. L&I, right, Labor and Industries, your workers' comp, OSHA, they do not tell us that we can't hire kids under 18. It's not if, it's how. Designate the jobs that will work, get them into the workplace faster, and that's where you go in, you recruit them, you train them, you guide them, you enable them, and that's where we recruit, and that's where we're finding the best sources of our labor. When we start stacking all of these up, this is where we start to make the difference. Now, future plans? Yeah, future plans. All of this, these are just a handful of things. When we start applying these things to outside labor, we start talking about the micro academies, we start building in the other talent pools. We start talking about our welding tent that we send out there to gain interest. We start talking about the other pieces to gain the interest. There's 25 different things that we're doing to go grab the interest that's not traditional. These are just 5 of the things that we're doing. But really when we start talking about the why, I have to get down and get individualized. Because I told you about the grant that we had to revamp the high school. The $200,000 grant came. This is where it gets individualized. The $200,000 grant came in as a special grant opportunities from our State Department of Commerce. And the grant was designed to be a business accelerator grant. So I talked to the high school. I said, I know it's not designed for education, but what do you think? I said, here's the angle. Let's pitch the grant to say we're going to redesign the shop to make it ready, workforce ready, to accelerate business because we're going to have business ready talent. All right. You could ask for up to $400,000. Let's ask. We asked. We got $200,000. Now it was the first time grant, so it took a while back and forth, but by the time we got the grant, by the time it was announced and everything was settled, they gave us a deadline by when we had to spend all the money. Had to have it spent by the end of June. When we got the message and we got everything signed, we had to spend $200,000 in 5 weeks. And you couldn't buy equipment. Huh? We could revamp it, but we couldn't spend it. We couldn't spend it on equipment. Now, we at Wagstaff, we could buy some stuff to go with it, but we couldn't buy it. We could just go write a check. $200,000, it's money, but that's not enough to actually go buy a contractor. We couldn't even get RFPs back from a contractor that much time. What we were also facing is we had a curmudgeony shop teacher at that point. We were changing shop teachers. And he was going to be in the way for 2 more weeks until school was over. We were going to effectively have 3 weeks of solid work to do it all. At that point, my the director over there who's overseeing this with me, my partner in crime, and he looked at me, he's like, how are we going to make this happen? I said, it's easy. This institute, all that we've been doing, here's what I need. I need 12 kits. You give me 12 juniors and seniors. I need 3 who can weld. I need 3 that can do CAD. and all of them that can work. And it's going to work. He says, you're kidding me. I said, I know. It's great. Effectively 3 weeks, $200,000. We nailed it. These kids. But the best thing was the transformation, and actually the whole revolution. We revolutionized that shop and everything that came with it. As a result of this transformation of the shop, it wasn't just the shop. It created a new atmosphere. It created a new life in the entire program. We easily found a new instructor to come in to bring it new life. But the enrollment in that program doubled the following semester, to the point now we're able to hire even another instructor. It doubled automatically. But the transformation in these individuals was incredible. So the person next to me here is Joe. Joe was not sure what he wanted to do. He knew that he liked shop, but Joe has never had a semester in his entire life where he passed all of his classes. Never. Joe has never had self-esteem. He's never known what he wants to do really, but he's never had an entire semester where he passed all of his classes. We took Joe in. He had fun. He had a good time. He was a workhorse. The guy was insane. Love him. But he had fun, and he succeeded. Now, since then, Joe got involved in this, but he started to catch a vision, and he started to understand what he could do and what was possible. Because of this, he got really excited about his ability to weld, and he really has harnessed his abilities to weld, and we've used him at our welding booth that we do out there with the kids. But this last semester, this last fall semester and this year, both semester he's passed 100% of his classes for the first time ever. That's the difference. He's going to be a senior this next year and he's going to nail it. And he's already got 2 job offers for when he graduates. That's the difference that this stuff makes. And I got to tell you, if he didn't, I'm still eyeing on whether or not we can find a home for Joe. But right now, the job offers that he got, I don't think I can compete with him, because he's got some pretty attractive job offers. But that's what we're starting to see. Again, while I use the examples of one industry, these are industry agnostic examples. What you do is up to you. The challenge here is you decide where you're going to go, but you can't do what you're always doing. You got to shift where you're going. And it's not what you're doing today, it's what you're going to see tomorrow, or you're going to keep getting what you've always been getting. But the key here is you got to start. You have to start. So, moving forward, that's my challenge to you. That's it. So, anyway, as we wrap up, if you want to ask questions, send any questions over, talk to me further, or ask me about the other 20 of the 25 things that we're working on. Feel free to shoot me a message, shoot me an email. I'll hang out for the next few minutes until I got to take the big run over to the other side. But anyway, I appreciate your time, appreciate you coming over, and have a great rest of your conference. So thank you very much.